Have you ever wondered why some people hate you, even when you've done nothing wrong? Sometimes, just by living right, just by shining a little brighter, you can make others uncomfortable. You don't need to steal anyone's chance. You don't need to take someone else's success. You don't even need to push your way through their chosen path, yet they still dislike you, simply because you dared to walk into the room with your light. The truth is, some people don't hate you because of your mistakes. They hate you because you did something right. Have you ever thought about that? You don't have to do anything wrong to be disliked. Sometimes, just doing the right thing, just shining a little brighter than what the room expects, is enough to stir up feelings you never invited. You didn't take their peace. You didn't block their blessings. You didn't snatch anything off their table. You simply walked in carrying your light. And that light exposed the darkness they were trying to hide. You see, the truth is, some people secretly hate you because you remind them of where they could have been. Your discipline reflects their laziness. Your courage exposes their fear. Your progress whispers to them, "This could have been you." But instead of changing their direction, they choose to change their perception of you. Instead of facing their own failures, they create a false image of you to make themselves feel better. They don't see your heart, they only see your results. And your results shout at them, "You stayed stuck while I kept moving forward." It's not your fault that you didn't give up. It's not your fault that you cried through it, bled through it, were betrayed, yet still held your head high. But some people simply cannot bear to see that, because deep in their hearts, they remember you both started from the same place. Maybe you shared the same pain, the same loss, even grew up in the same broken home. But what you chose to do with your wounds made all the difference. You got up, they stayed down. You healed, they hid. You trusted God, they trusted their excuses. And now, without saying a single word, your life is preaching a sermon to theirs. Every time you show up with integrity, they feel judged. Every time you smile in peace, they feel chaos inside. Every time you take one more step forward, it reminds them of the years they stood still. The truth hurts, but instead of letting that truth teach them, they let it twist them, twisting into jealousy, twisting into resentment, twisting into quiet hatred, the kind they don't dare to admit. People hate what they fear, and they fear what they don't understand. They don't understand how you keep getting back up when life knocks you down. They don't understand how you keep forgiving those who tried to destroy you. They don't understand how you remain kind in a world that has given you every reason to be bitter. And instead of leaning in and learning from you, they shut down and look for ways to tear you apart. But don't let it change you. Don't dim your light just to make the dark more comfortable. Don't apologize for growing. Don't hide your gifts just because they make others feel small. God didn't raise you to shrink. He didn't give you strength so you would stay silent. And He certainly didn't bring you this far for you to start tiptoeing around insecure people. Understand this: your presence will disturb those who have settled. Your growth will offend those who have given up. Your boldness will irritate the timid. Your success will provoke those who only wanted you to survive, not thrive. But let them feel what they need to feel. You keep shining. You keep moving forward. Because your life was never meant to be background music for someone else's comfort. They didn't see the nights you prayed with tears soaking your pillow. They didn't see the days you felt abandoned by everyone, except God. They have no idea the pressure you carry just to keep going. So if they hate you for the crown you wear now, let them hate. Because you paid for that crown with pain they never saw. You earned it through battles they never had the faith to fight. You don't owe anyone a dimmed-down version of yourself. If your light bothers them, that's between them and their own darkness. If your wins make them uncomfortable, maybe it's because deep down they knew they had the same chance, but they let fear win. But you didn't, and you won't. because you're not walking in pride, you're walking in purpose. And when people hate you for that, you don't need to fight back. You don't need to match their bitterness. You don't need to explain yourself to small minds. You just keep shining, because your light was never made to fit. It was made to lead. So keep shining. Let them talk. Let them hate. Your reward is not in their applause. It's in your obedience to your purpose. Sometimes people don't hate you because you did something wrong. They hate you because you did something. You come out stronger, lighter, and closer to your destiny. So, I came here today to remind you, not every voice deserves an answer. Some voices are sent to distract, others to delay, and some to destroy. But your power is not in how loudly you argue. Your power is in how deeply you trust. Trust that God saw the whole conversation. Trust that He heard the accusations. Trust that He knows the truth. And trust that in time, He will make all things clear. You're not called to convince. You're called to walk in truth. That's the battle many of us face. We waste precious time trying to be understood, trying to be accepted, trying to justify our every move to people who aren't even equipped to carry the vision God placed inside us. Let me ask you something. When did your calling become a courtroom? When did your obedience require an audience? Somewhere along the way, we've allowed the opinions of others to weigh more than the voice of God. And that's why so many are walking around exhausted, confused, and spiritually drained. There's a danger in trying to convince people who are spiritually asleep. When someone's heart is closed and their ears are deaf to truth, no amount of talking can wake them up. They'll take your words and twist them. They'll nod their heads, but reject your spirit. Instead of growing, you'll be stuck. Stuck in endless conversations that lead nowhere. Stuck defending what you should be walking in. Stuck apologizing for your difference, when your difference is the very evidence that God has His hand on your life. When Jesus walked the earth, He did not seek to be understood by everyone. In fact, He was misunderstood, rejected, and questioned at every turn. But He didn't stop. He didn't sit down to explain. He kept moving, walking in the truth He knew God had called Him to. Now, as you reflect on this, remember, sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's power. And sometimes, the best way to protect your peace is to walk away from those who only seek to confuse you, following what we discussed earlier. When you start trusting what you're doing and stop explaining yourself, life changes. Jesus didn't waste time explaining every miracle, every parable, or every command. He knew that if someone wasn't walking in the Spirit, they wouldn't be able to see the truth, even if it stood right in front of them. That's what happens when you try to explain spiritual things to carnal minds. They reject it not because it's false, but because they're not ready to receive it. Some of you are spending too much time trying to fix what isn't your burden. You're trying to fix their misunderstanding. You're cleaning up lies that were never based in truth. You're trying to reason with jealousy, soften pride, and make envy comfortable with your anointing. And every time you explain yourself to the wrong people, you lower your voice to match their frequency. And the more you do this, the more you forget who you are. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were never called to convince those who were committed to doubt. God didn't anoint you to negotiate with darkness. He anointed you to walk in light. There's a reason your path doesn't make sense to them. There's a reason your peace offends them. There's a reason your growth bothers them. Because what they don't understand, they can't control. And what they can't control, they often try to criticize. But let me remind you of something. God never asked you to explain. He asked you to obey. He didn't say, "Go into all the world and be understood." He said, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel." He didn't say, "Sit down and debate your assignment." He said, "Walk by faith and not by sight. The moment you truly trust that, you'll stop chasing the approval of people who are allergic to your purpose. There's a peace that comes when you stop explaining. A calmness settles when you finally realize, I don't owe anyone a breakdown of my obedience. I don't have to justify every step I take when I know God ordered it. I don't need applause from a crowd I was never called to entertain. I just need to be faithful. And listen, faithfulness won't always be popular. Sometimes it will look like isolation. Sometimes it will look like people walking away because they can't figure you out. But you must choose. Do you want to be understood by the world or used by God? You can't have both. If you're too busy explaining, you'll miss the door that just opened. If you're too caught up convincing, you'll miss the quiet whisper of God saying, keep moving, I've got you. The truth is, when you walk in truth, you will offend some people, not because you're wrong, but because truth exposes what's fake. And when your light shines too brightly, those hiding in shadows will either cover their eyes or try to dim you down. Don't let them. Don't tone yourself down to make others comfortable. Don't slow your pace to make others feel less insecure. Don't minimize what God is doing in you to fit inside their limited view. You were never called to fit in. You were called to stand out. That standing out, that calling, that purpose, that anointing will make you a target, but it will also make you unstoppable. Because when God is for you, no explanation is necessary. And when God is not in it, no explanation will ever be enough. Some people look the part. They wear kindness on their faces, speak softly, and even mention God when it suits them. But if you're not careful, if you're not spiritually awake, you'll start opening your heart to voices that were never sent to bless you. You'll sit at tables you were never meant to dine at. You'll listen to advice that doesn't come from heaven but carries confusion, fear, or manipulation. Not everyone who approaches you is coming in the right spirit. And if you don't learn how to discern the spirit behind the person, you'll be deceived by the smile, distracted by the charm, and pulled away from the very place God planted you. There is a difference between a person and the spirit that operates through them. The enemy knows he can't destroy you openly, so he disguises himself in conversation. He doesn't just come through opposition. He comes through influence. He comes through people who say the right things, but carry the wrong motives. That's why Scripture says to test the spirits. Don't be fooled by the surface. Don't be so eager for connection that you miss the corruption hiding underneath. Just because someone is near you doesn't mean they're for you. And just because someone walks with you doesn't mean they carry your heart. We must learn to see beyond what people say and listen to what their spirit reveals. Some conversations aren't conversations at all. They're spiritual assignments designed to distract, disturb, and derail. That's why you feel heavy after talking with certain people. That's why your peace feels shaken after certain interactions. You start second-guessing yourself, not because you're wrong, but because you've been exposed to a spirit working against your purpose. There are people who know exactly what they're doing when they challenge you. They don't need clarity. They need control. And their questions aren't rooted in love. They're born out of fear, envy, or spiritual blindness. But because they come wrapped in the familiar, we lean in. We think, they've known me for years. They care. Surely they just want to help. But let me tell you, Judas knew Jesus too. And Judas kissed him, not to honor him, but to betray him. You better believe the enemy knows how to mimic care while delivering confusion. So, how do you respond? With discernment, with silence, with prayer. You don't argue with spirits. You don't wrestle in the flesh when the battle is spiritual. Protect your oil, protect your anointing, protect your peace. You've come too far, cried too long, and prayed too hard to get here. Don't let a wrong spirit pull you back into old patterns. Don't let the enemy disguise himself in someone's tone and rob you of your truth. Keep your ears tuned to heaven. Keep your spirit anchored in truth. And if something doesn't feel right, pause. If peace leaves the room when someone walks in, take notice. That's not paranoia. That's discernment. That's the Spirit of God sounding the alarm. In this life, you will meet many people, some sent by God, some sent by the enemy. You must know the difference, not by their words, but by their fruit. Not by how they sound, but by what they stir in your soul. When you truly discern the Spirit, you stop explaining, stop reacting, stop getting pulled into emotional confusion, and instead, you stand firm. Firm in truth, firm in silence, firm in the authority God gave you. There's something powerful about silence, something sacred, something spiritual. Avoidance, silence, is a weapon forged in the fire of self-control and sharpened by the Spirit of God. When used with wisdom, silence will speak louder than your loudest defense ever could. Too often, we think we must say something to fix what people think about us. We try to explain ourselves, justify our actions, give reasons for our growth, clarity, or change. We want them to understand, to see our heart, to hear the truth from our mouths before they hear the lies from someone else's. But the more we speak, the more tangled we become in the web of their confusion. Because sometimes it's not about the facts, it's about the spirit behind the listener. When someone's heart is poisoned, your words won't heal them. When someone's intention is to tear you down, even your best explanation will be used as a tool against you. That's why you must learn the strength of being silent, not in fear, but in faith. Not because you don't have something to say, but because you finally realize that not every conversation is worth having. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every question comes from a sincere heart. You've got to discern the difference between a soul that is seeking truth and a spirit that is sent to disrupt your peace. Because if the enemy can't defeat you with opposition, he will wear you down with distraction. And that distraction often comes in the form of unnecessary dialogue, arguments that lead nowhere, discussions that only stir more doubt, and back and forth that chips away at your confidence. Little by little, you don't owe everyone a reply. You don't owe an explanation for the way God is moving in your life. You don't have to break down your healing for those who benefit from your brokenness. You don't have to describe your vision to people who were never given the eyes to see it. The moment you realize that your silence can be holy, you will stop giving your voice to people who cannot carry your truth. There is a kind of silence that settles a storm. Not the storm around you, but the one within you. That internal chaos that makes you feel like you must be understood, that you must defend yourself, that you must make it right with people who've already made up their minds. That storm will rage until you surrender it to God, until you say, "Lord, you see it all. You hear what they're saying. You know what's true, and I'm going to trust that. You'll fight for me better than I could ever fight for myself." That's when silence becomes not just a strategy, but a declaration of faith. Jesus, in his final hours, stood before a council of accusers. They hurled lies, twisted his words, mocked him, and yet he remained silent. Not because he had nothing to say, but because he had already said enough. His life had spoken. His miracles had spoken. His love had spoken. And now, his silence spoke too. It said, "I don't need your approval to fulfill my purpose. I don't need your agreement to walk in truth. I know who I am. My Father knows who I am. That's enough." There will be moments in your life when you are called to do the same, when your name is in rooms you never entered, when your heart is misrepresented, when your integrity is questioned, when people who once walked with you now speak against you. And in those moments, you will feel the urge to clear your name, to fix the story, to set the record straight. But if you want peace, if you want strength, if you want to walk in spiritual authority, you must learn to be quiet when your flesh wants to shout. Because when you choose silence, you're not being passive, you're being powerful. You're choosing to let God work instead of working against Him. You're choosing not to give the enemy any more fuel. You're choosing to protect your spirit, your energy, and your focus. And in time, your fruit will speak. Your life will testify. Your peace will become your answer. And the very people who questioned you will be silenced, not by your words, but by what God does through you. So stand still, be silent, hold your peace, let them talk, let them wonder, let them assume. You're not here to be explained, you're here to be faithful. And when God raises you in the presence of those who tried to bury you, it will be clear that your silence wasn't surrender, it was strength. You cannot win a spiritual battle with emotional weapons. You cannot overcome darkness with explanation. And yet, time and time again, we try, we argue, we defend, we plead, we cry. We offer our hearts to people who are being used to wound us. We pour truth into conversations that were never designed to produce understanding, only chaos. But no matter how sincere your words, no matter how calm your tone, no matter how much you try to explain yourself to someone who's operating under a spirit of confusion, that confusion will not lift. Because it's not your job to cast out what only God can confront. That's a battle you cannot win with words. We must stop confusing emotional effort with spiritual authority. Some of you have been exhausting yourselves, giving speech after speech, text after text, sitting down again and again with people who aren't even listening to your heart. Their ears hear, but their spirit is closed. And instead of gaining peace, you come away feeling even more empty. That's not conversation, that's a trap. That's a spiritual snare dressed up like reconciliation. If the enemy can't steal your calling, he'll try to keep you stuck in cycles of reaction, where your energy is constantly being drained and your focus constantly being stolen. God didn't call you to fight every battle. He didn't call you to sit at every table. Some conversations are not your assignment. Some people are not your responsibility. You must learn to recognize when it's not a misunderstanding, it's warfare. And when it is warfare, your best weapon isn't your voice. It's your silence, your obedience, your discernment, and your ability to walk away without guilt. Because you cannot fight fire with feelings. You need fire from above. You need the wisdom to know when to speak, and the courage to stay quiet when silence is what protects your soul. The enemy is cunning. He doesn't just attack your circumstances, he attacks your peace. And if you don't learn to discern when he's at work, you may find yourself trapped in endless battles that were never yours to fight. In the next section, we'll explore how to protect your peace, guard your spirit, and recognize when it's time to step back and trust God to do the rest. Let's continue this journey on page 4. The enemy knows exactly how to push your buttons. He knows how to make you reactive, not responsive. And when you become reactive, you say things you didn't need to say. You overexpose yourself, and you give too much of your truth to people who only came to twist it. While you're trying to defend your name, you're forfeiting your peace. The longer you stay in that space, the more your spirit becomes restless, and the less room you leave for God to step in. There is a discipline in letting God fight for you. It takes maturity to know when to close your mouth and let heaven open its doors. Because God sees what you cannot. He hears the motives behind their words. He knows what they say when you're not around. And He doesn't need your explanation to bring justice. He needs your trust. The battle is not yours. The misunderstanding is not yours to solve. The lie they're spreading, the shade they're throwing, the version of you they're creating in their head, none of that can stop God from moving. But your distraction can. Your obsession with being understood can. Your addiction to defending yourself can. And when you keep stepping in, You keep pushing God out. Some of you are in the middle of spiritual warfare and didn't even realize it. You thought it was just a disagreement, just a toxic friend, just a jealous coworker, just an old relationship gone cold. But what's been attacking you isn't the personas, the spirit operating through them. And when you try to fix that with feelings, you lose. You lose your strength, your clarity, your time, and most importantly, you lose your spiritual posture. You don't win these battles by raising your voice. You win by raising your standard. You don't win by lowering yourself to their level. You win by standing on higher ground. You don't overcome the darkness in them by dimming your light. You overcome it by shining brighter even if they can't stand it. Don't play the enemy's game. Don't let him bait you into an argument. Don't fall into the trap of over-explaining when God already approved you. Let your obedience speak. Let your fruit speak. Let your peace speak. That's how you fight. That's how you win it, by shouting louder, but by standing firmer. Not by convincing people, but by walking so closely with God that the lies don't even stick to you anymore. You become untouchable not because you're perfect, but because you're protected. Because you've chosen to fight differently. Because you've chosen to trust the one who sees all things and makes all things right in his time. There's something deeply reassuring about knowing that God sees everything, not just what's done in the open, not just what's said to your face, but what's whispered in the dark, what's plotted behind closed doors, what's discussed in silence when your name is brought up in rooms you've never even entered. And I want you to hold on to this truth. You don't have to respond, because God already knows. You don't have to explain, because God already saw. You don't have to defend yourself, because God already heard every word they spoke when they thought no one else was listening. So many of us wrestle with the ache of being misrepresented. We carry the sting of betrayal, the heaviness of slander, the silence of those who turned away without asking a single question. We live with the weight of people believing lies, choosing sides, judging motives they never took the time to understand. And we find ourselves wanting to shout, wanting to prove our innocence, wanting to stand up and say, "That's not who I am." But when you serve a God who sees everything, you begin to understand you don't need to fight battles He's already taken into His hands. You don't have to explain why you walked away from what was destroying you. You don't have to justify why you changed your number, set boundaries, or chose peace over chaos. They'll create their own stories, and they'll find others willing to believe them. But their agreement doesn't make it truth. Their version doesn't rewrite God's plan. And just because they're louder doesn't mean they're right. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is let God speak through your silence. And He will, because what they don't see, He does. He saw the nights you cried while they laughed. He saw the way you stayed faithful while they questioned your heart. He saw the moments you were tempted to clap back, tempted to defend, tempted to fight fire with fire. But you didn't. You held your tongue. You walked away. You chose the high road. And that road may feel lonely at times, but it's the road that leads to blessing. It's the road where God exalts the humble, the road where He vindicates the silent, the road where He makes it known that your character was not built on public opinion, but on private obedience. Let them say what they want. Let them tell their version. Let them spread what they think they know. That's not your concern. Your concern is keeping your hands clean. Your concern is guarding your heart. Your concern is walking in such alignment with God that nothing they do can pull you out of your peace, because that peace didn't come from them, and it can't be stolen by them. That's the kind of strength you find when you stop needing people to understand you and start trusting that God will handle what you can't. Sometimes we think vindication means the truth will come out quickly, that people will wake up and see us clearly. But often, vindication doesn't come in a moment. It comes over time. It comes in seasons. It comes when the fruit of your life begins to blossom, while the lies spoken against you wither and fade. It comes when the very people who doubted you have to watch you grow, rise, and flourish not in pride, but in humility. Not to prove a point, but to fulfill a purpose. And that's when your silence becomes a testimony. That's when your endurance becomes a sermon. And listen to me. When God starts blessing you in front of those who once tried to bury you, don't gloat. Don't retaliate. Don't say, "I told you so." Just keep walking, keep loving, keep shining. Because your elevation is not about revenge. It's about revelation. It's about revealing the God who never stopped working behind the scenes, even when no one else saw you. It's about revealing the hand of God that lifts, heals, and promotes in His own perfect timing. And when He moves, He doesn't need permission from those who spoke against you. He doesn't need to ask anyone's opinion. He just moves, and everyone sees it. So you don't have to chase people down to correct their version. You don't have to beg to be heard. You don't have to sit at tables where you're only going to be picked apart. You don't have to force anything. Just be faithful. Just stay the course. Just let your consistency outlast their criticism. Let your peace confuse their expectations. Let your presence speak where your words no longer need to go. Because God is still a defender. God is still a witness. And God is still a rewarder of those who keep walking when it would have been easier to stop and argue. You don't have to win their approval. You just need to trust that the one who sees in secret will reward you in the open. That's His promise, and His promise never fails. Thank you for walking with me through this journey of faith, trust, and spiritual strength. May your silence become your strength, and your peace become your answer. Keep walking, because God is with you every step of the way. If this message resonates with your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue this journey of discovery, healing, and growth together every day.